in Seattle, Washington at Elysian Brewing Company, one of the brew pubs, with head brewer Dick Cantwell. Dick, thanks for having us.
Oh, sure. Thanks a lot for coming in.
I love the place so far. You just showed us around the brewery, and it's got a great feel. You've got some good art on the wall. You're in a pretty hip neighborhood here. What is this neighborhood we're in?
This is Capitol Hill, and actually this neighborhood is much hipper since we got here 15 years ago. It sort of has come up to meet us. When we first moved in here, people said, "Where is it?"
Okay.
But now they know where it is.
Got it. You put it on the map.
Well, lots of people did, but we were here at the right time.
Okay, beautiful. All right, and now obviously something that my viewers want to hear about is the beer. Some of your beer we don't get, especially I'm from California, so I know your distributorship doesn't go too far. So the first thing about that is you're about to open a new production facility, right?
Yep, that's right. In the Georgetown neighborhood of Seattle, it'll be a 60,000 barrel capacity brewery, so it'll be quite a leap upward for us. That we certainly don't anticipate doing that right off the bat. But it'll help us to mainly to fill in the distribution areas we're in already and think about some others, but mainly infill. We don't want to take over the world.
And in this brewery, you have what, 20 barrels?
20 barrel system. We made about 5,500 barrels here last year.
Okay. So I went through your beer menu, which is huge. How many beers do you keep on tap here?
Well, typically about 15, 16.
And you have another brew pub with even more taps, right?
Well, yeah, one of our others has 20, and the third one has 16 as well, and we brew in all three locations, and that's why we can have that many beers.
Okay. And one thing you had mentioned to me, we were talking just before the interview, which I can relate to because I'm a beer geek. Your fans, they want every beer you've ever brewed on tap all the time.
And new stuff, too. Yeah.
It's just a pain to keep up with.
Well, that's what keeps us interested, too.
Sure.
And we're lucky that we have that kind of freedom. We're also lucky that the head brewer is one of the owners, too. So, we don't have somebody saying, "Oh, no, you can only make 12 beers. That's all we want." No, we got to be doing new stuff all the time.
Great. Well, and speaking of being the head brewer, too, my viewers and listeners always ask this when I do interviews. Do you still brew beer?
Do I still brew beer? Yes, I do. I've brewed within the last week.
Oh, okay.
Does that count? I mean, sometimes time passes. The trouble is that as I have more and more responsibilities and I do more marketing and stuff as time goes on, I'm not a reliable shift employee. So I do my brewing at one of the other places where I'm not going to get in anybody's way.
Well, and I've seen your office where you work when you're not brewing, and it's a table here in the restaurant.
Yeah. I've got my iPad, I've got my raspberries, my sunglasses, all the things you need.
All right, let's talk beer. We picked 3 here that I found pretty interesting. Tell me about the first one. What is this beer?
That is the Loser, and it's a beer that we did sort of a cross-branding thing with Sub Pop Records for their 20th anniversary a couple of years ago. And actually the inspiration was that started out with one of my first trips to Colorado for some of the work that we do with New Belgium. I was looking at the mountains as I was driving up, and I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of mountains, because we only have the one big mountain here, Rainier. They've got a lot of big mountains, and I kept thinking, wow, those all have names. And so I came back and I brewed a beer at Tangletown. And so when Sub Pop came calling about what kind of beer they wanted, we did some blends. So the beer they liked the best was a 50-50 blend of Generic Eminence with Bifrost, our pale winter ale. So that's basically what this beer is. It's taking some of the elements of each of those beers, one of which is the Sriracha Ace hops. That's that sort of waxy, tropical kind of note that you get in there. It's kind of unusual. We bittered with those hops. And
it's an amazing hop.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm fortunate in living close to the Yakima Valley so that I know quite a few of the farmers pretty well. And several years ago, one of the farmers, Darren Gamache of Gamache Family Farms, they're the only family that grows Amarillo, by the way. Okay. But he called me up and he said that they had grown, I think, 2 plants of this Japanese variety of hop called Sriracha Ace. And nobody else in this country had used it yet. And so he asked me if I'd brew a beer at Tangletown for him with it, and I did. But, it's really great to be able to have that kind of contact and immediacy with the people who are producing it. And now that hop is, I don't mean it's like setting the world on fire, but it's become a pretty popular specialty hop.
Yeah. It has a unique character to it. Like you said, it's kind of tropical. There's a little coconut in there, but it's also really smooth and subtle.
Yeah, I agree. It's unusual, and that's just with the bittering. That's that quality that's coming through in the bittering. Wow. I once made a double IPA called Kanishiki, named after the big sumo wrestler who was actually an American.
Okay.
And I called it that because this was it was an American grown version of a Japanese hop that I was putting in a really big beer.
Right, perfect.
And so that was bittered and finished with it. And I thought it was a bit much with it all the way through. I mean, it really hits you over the nose in the finish.
Okay.
But some people just, I mean, speaking of people who want things all the time that I've brewed in the past, I mean, that's a beer that people mention often.
All right, what's the next beer that you've poured for us here?
That is the Sextacula, which is the 15th anniversary beer that we brewed. And it's kind of an outgrowth of an Iron Brewer competition that we were in, I don't know, a few months ago. And the two ingredients that we were required to use were treacle and oats. And so we used golden syrup, the pale version of treacle. And actually, I contacted some friends in England and had emails in hand when I was at the competition in case there was a challenge about the golden syrup being treacle. I said, no, I have the former brewmaster from Young's who says that it's treacle. So we used golden syrup, we soaked some golden raisins in rum, and also the oats, and a lot of Nelson Sauvin hops, which is a hop that I'm really in love with these days. So it's a fairly strong version of that first beer. That was called Triacula, because that's Latin for treacle.
Okay.
And so then we did a double version, so of course it was Sextacula.
Beautiful. Love the name. The beer has, it's a pretty pronounced bitterness to it, which I've been a sissy about lately if beers are too bitter. But this isn't, it doesn't bite. It's not harsh, and it doesn't really kick you. It's just a nice bitterness.
I think that's the Nelson Sauvin. And actually, also, that sort of speaks to one of my general watchwords about beer. It's all about balance. Yeah. Everything, even if it's intense, has to be balanced.
Well, I can imagine using the sugar also helped to add sweetness and balance it out. So.
Yeah. Actually, I liked using the golden syrup. We've made this beer now 3 times, and we thought we were only going to do it once.
Really? How many pounds of syrup go into it?
Oh, how much is it? 20?
Okay.
Yeah, not an incredible amount, but that's also in a 10 hectoliter batch.
Okay.
When we made it here, we used a lot more.
And does that go right into the boil kettle?
Yeah.
Do you have to do it at the end so it doesn't caramelize, or you just throw it right in?
No, you want it to caramelize.
Okay.
To some extent. I mean, you stir it up so that it doesn't sink to the bottom and scorch.
Yeah.
But you want it to be part of the boil.
Okay. All right, and the last beer, what do we have here?
This is one of the collaborative beers that we've done with New Belgium. This is the Trip 9. We called this series the Trip. And what they do is some of their folks come up with ideas for beers, and then there's a panel of us brewers who put together the recipe for it.
A panel between Elysian and New Belgium.
Yeah, okay. Between Elysian and New Belgium. Mainly it's Grady Hall, the assistant brewmaster at New Belgium, who comes up with the ideas, but we all contribute. Peter Buchart, me, Marcus, the guy you met earlier. This one was put together, sort of not surprisingly, once you hear what the ingredients are, by their materials procuring guy. I mean, he's the one who sources the hops, who finds this and that. Okay. And this is, by style, they're calling it a Down Under IPA. And it's an IPA made with Australian and New Zealand hops, Pacific Gem, Galaxy, and Nelson Sauvin, like what's in the Sextacula, and passion fruit.
Okay.
And we used passion fruit puree. And when we added that passion fruit to the whirlpool, everybody in the place just sat up and said, "What is that?"
Right. I wouldn't have guessed IPA if you were to tell me the style, or ask me what style of beer this is. And I wonder if that's the passion fruit mellowing it out.
I think that's exactly what it is. It's also not super high in gravity.
Okay.
So it doesn't have quite the alcohol as a like a 6.5-7% IPA does.
Do you know about what the IBUs are?
Oh, gee. I'm guessing 75.
Okay. Yeah, the passion fruit really smooths it out. And that's another thing I wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have said, oh, there's passion fruit in that, which I think is a good thing. That might have meant you used too much.
Well, in the very first time we brewed it, we probably did use too much. We ended up doing a second brew with no passion fruit and blending it so that we basically cut the amount of the first batch in half.
Got it. And did you experiment with anything other than a puree as a way to add the fruit?
No, because it was super delicious.
Yeah. Just stick with what's good.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's been great to taste your beers and see your brewery, Dick. I really appreciate it. And cheers to you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, this BN On the Road stop is brought to you by craftbeer.com, celebrating the very best in American craft beer. We'll see you at the next one.
The Brewing Network.